It's all about context, because if we have a student who in their third week stoplight survey, faculty are like, they have a red light because they don't have a book yet. Well, if we know this person doesn't have a book because she just lost her job and she can't afford it, and this person doesn't have a book, and admissions identified the student as low academic goals and motivation, and then this student is an athlete, and we don't know why they don't have their book, but we're just going to call the coach and it will get straightened out, right? And in those three places, if I'm just working off a spreadsheet, I would say, okay, they're all red. I'm just going to send them an email that says, hey, if you need something, let me know. But if I have the context and I have a chance to connect and understand what's actually going on, why are these students not registering? Then all of a sudden I can give this student a grant, I can call this coach, and I can say to this student, hey, I need you to come in. We're going to do weekly meetings of success coaching so that we can make sure you get to be, where you need to. So that process of connecting, making sure you see your students and solving the problems, I think will have such an impact on retention in the fall.
Welcome to Cap and Gown. I'm Matt Boisvert.
I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success at Pharos Resources.
And we are excited about our 7th episode of Cap and Gown. Let's get started.
We are excited about it. Let's see, April 13th, we've already made it that far in the spring semester. So we want to talk a little bit about rhythm of the academic year today. And then also talk about a process that I know is going on for many of you on your campuses, which is our not enrolled process. So a couple of housekeeping things. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. We'd love for you to join us on, what is this thing called? Zoom?
This is Zoom.
How could I forget after the last year? Because we're going to be doing some polls. We'd love for you to participate in that. And then also we have all of our previous Cap and Gowns, and then also our Mission First on Anchor. So if you want to listen to those.
So this is a link to our tap link. It has all of these different ways of connecting with us and being able to follow along. I think there's a lot. Rachel, I was reviewing some of our early webinars. I think we're on webinar like number 32 for the year. But just going back and thinking about, a year ago, we were talking about community during COVID. And right now, it's a good time to go back and listen to that. That's available as you go to our YouTube channel. So be sure that you subscribe to that so that you can get access to all the new ones, but also go back and review our previous.
And if you have a thing you'd like us to talk about, please let me know. Rachel at pharosresources.com. I'm always excited to hear new ideas. In fact, last week we were on a campus. We took our first trip in a while. And while we were there, Kirk was telling us about this book. I saw this on his desk and I was like, what is that? And he was like, it's amazing. You have to read it. So I haven't started it. I just got it, but you all can expect to be hearing about this soon because it's the new thing that I'm reading. So any of those book recommendations or ideas that you have or processes that you love or questions, please let me know because we're happy to address those.
And culture is critical. Right now, investing in your culture is one of the most important things. So Rachel, we, not too long ago, this was us taking a trip in our office, pretending.
That's sad.
We were supposed to be in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Instead, we just had to take a picture like
we
this.
just pretended we were in Puerto Rico, but we have had some travel.
Yeah. So we were on 2 campuses last week in Georgia. We went to Emmanuel College and then also we went to Reinhardt. And apparently we came at the exact time, right time for Reinhardt because everything on their entire campus was in bloom. So it was amazing to see that. And, we're in West Texas. So even when it's the exact right time, things don't bloom. So we were super happy to see something.
I was just happy to come home to a crepe myrtle starting.
Yeah, for
sure. Thinking about it. But we have had some, I just want to go back and say, if you have a neat campus and a neat area you'd like for us to visit, let us know because we're ready.
This is when we went to Alaska Christian and they let me fish and I caught the only fish I've ever caught in Alaska. I caught trout and then later I caught salmon. So, and you went fishing on one of our trips too.
Went on the Bow River.
Yeah.
This is in Calgary.
So
we're ready.
Matt's a real fisherman. And so he wanted to go fishing on the Bow River. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll take a book because who knows how long it's going to take. And I sat down and read like a sentence. And he was like, Rachel, come take a picture. So that was efficient.
Yeah.
Good work.
I like to catch quickly. We're not doing 20 questions today.
No.
Okay.
I have to save those for Anthony because I'm running out of them.
Well, I'm ready to do State of the Union. Last week, I thought the State of the Union was, we're wrapping up. We're on the home stretch. It's rest is in sight. And then I came home and just started to find a lot of really interesting articles. I just want to share some of these. So first, there's an article by Joshua Kim, and this is on Inside Higher Ed, and he referenced Georgetown professor Cal Newport's first article that was, "Is email making professors stupid?" And then it
When
had
was that written?
So that was in 2019.
Oh.
And then it received such an overwhelming response. He wrote a book about it. And so Joshua came back and he said, is Zoom making us all stupid? Which, if you think about,
what does that mean?
Well, what he was, as he was comparing it to the Georgetown professor's post, what he was saying is, there's a thing in higher ed where we need time to step back and have that kind of, what do you call it, the creative space or pause. And what Zoom has done, so because we're not walking across campus to go to a meeting, that 10-minute walk
like
that you would take
decompression time
to decompress. Instead, you're just one Zoom to the next Zoom. And I know it's ironic because we're on Zoom right now, but hopefully you're finding time to recharge, to think critically, to think about some of the things that are happening on your campus. And that is an important part of our experience. And one of the reasons why we love working in higher ed. So is Zoom making staff stupid?
Which I would take a little bit of issue with. Is it making us stupid? How about, is it wearing us out and exhausting us? And
it's provocative.
Okay.
That's how people read it.
We're tired.
Hopefully the answer is no, but we're tired. But related, Gen Z,
what is Gen Z?
So those who are in college right now,
okay,
and a little younger, but the Barna Group, who like to survey Gen Z and other generations in the past, they were asking about screen time and wanting to understand what Gen Z thinks about all the time that they're spending on screens, on their iPhone and now with Zoom. And it's just interesting because the majority of Gen Z says that they feel they're spending too much time. It's like 60% too much time on screens. 54% say that they feel bad about it. And also that it distracts them from things that they have to get done. And so there's a whole lot to say about, I was thinking, Rachel, what will the common read be this coming fall, right? I mean, you think about all the things that everyone's gone through, and right now, if you're not on a screen in the middle of the pandemic, I don't know what you're doing, because it's kind of required.
Yeah. I mean, what that makes me think is, even before the pandemic, I think everybody was like, we're distracted, we're addicted, we're spending too much time on our phones, we're spending too much time looking at screens. And then I don't know what you do when that becomes ubiquitous. That's the only way we're connecting with each other. It's feeding this addiction by necessity, but also not setting us up for healthy, successful habits in the future. So that is of concern for sure. It's going to be interesting to see if people can make that break from screens easily because they're so sick of it, or if there is this thing that's changed in our brains where we are still really connected to screens.
Yeah. So the Barna Group's working with Andy Crouch and Andy's daughter on how to help Gen Z kind of get away from their screen, which I think is really interesting. I'm really excited about this news. This is where the Department of Education has forgiven capital financing loans for historically Black colleges and universities. 45 HBCUs have had $1.6 billion in debt eliminated. Can you imagine?
Awesome.
It's like Jubilee. I mean, the
awesome.
what that does for those schools and how they're able to turn around and invest in their student success. They're saying this is going to change everything. And related to that, the next article is just Biden's proposed budget increases for funding Pell and research and HBCUs. A lot happening in higher ed where the administration is really focusing on investing in, particularly those historically under invested in areas. So really outstanding.
Some good moves there.
Yeah. I have just a couple more.
Okay. And we got a lot of State of the Union today.
We do. So, we talk about FTF zeros. So when we're doing Spark reports and we're showing schools the difference in student success for students who come to campus with any transfer credits, whether that's dual enrolled credit or AP credit.
So what is that? FTF is first time freshman.
First time freshman, zero
hours.
Transfer. So when we talk about FTF zeros, typically, for all of our Spark schools, we see that as a higher at-risk population.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a really great article, again, in the Inside Higher Ed. It's titled Rethinking Dual Enrollment to Advance Equitable Transfer. And essentially what it's saying is, if we step back from, and it's kind of our kintsugi idea of like, how do we make something beautiful out of this pandemic? One of the things is how it's encouraging schools, colleges to invest in partnership with K-12 to provide dual enrollment opportunities. In the past, dual enrollment's kind of been seen as something that just happens for universities. They haven't been really active in it. And what this is pointing out is a lot of times that creates inequity for schools. In particular, if you think about inner city schools or schools that are underrepresented, first generation students, and that there's a real power in our schools partnering with the K-12s to provide those dual
better
enrollment
opportunities. Yeah.
And I just want to strongly encourage that. It's going to help in terms of from an enrollment standpoint, but we know that it will help from a student success standpoint. So I know that there are a lot of institutions that are trying to think about bridge and how to provide that.
Well, you and I were even talking with Mason at Reinhardt about this idea that if we know that that's an at-risk factor, then we could offer students a $200 scholarship to have gotten 3 hours before they come to campus, right?
Right.
Take a community college class, take a local class, whatever. It will help them get used to being in college, which then will give them a head start when they actually come to our campuses. And it would be a really great investment for students
so
to
I
be
love
able to have that experience.
It is one of those opportunities to come out of this with something stronger.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, my State of the Union, I don't know if you'll think is as deep thinking as yours, but did you guys hear about the University of Kentucky, who was accepting for a program on their campus? They usually accept between 35 and 40 students, the Selective College of Health Science program.
Yeah.
You guys, this makes me sweat. If I was this person who did this, I would be like, I have to go to my room and never come out. They sent out emails to 500,000 students with an acceptance. Let's just sit there for a minute. You
said 36 typically.
They can accept 35 to 40. They accepted 500,000. So oops. I don't know what happens to you internally when you realize that you've done that. I also don't know how you recover. It's just, I don't know who did it. Obviously, it's very kind of them to not be saying like, hey, this person did it, but I feel you. That's, again, makes me very sweaty. So hopefully they recovered. All right, we are going to talk about something that is going on your campus right now. We are in the middle of, thinking about the rhythm of the academic year, we want to talk about our not yet registered process. I see those of you who are joining us. Allison, I know you're in the middle of this. Glenn's pulling data for his school. Michelle, I know you're doing this too. Like, this is where we are. We are in the middle of students are not registered. And I want to convince you, first of all, that this is where you should be spending your time over the next 3 to 4 weeks, however long you have them on campus. I want to talk about some really specific examples of why students don't register and how we can connect with them and try to solve that problem for them. And then I also want to talk about some best practices that Matt and I have collected as we've worked with schools over the years, and then also as we've done this individual work. So first, let's talk about giving this vision for fall and this idea that we have to figure out what's going to be going on in the fall. So first of all, the reason, sorry, can you go back one? The reason we're investing in this process right now is because obviously we're all concerned about what's going to happen in the fall with retention. I think enrollment management is worried about yields because of wait lists and because of all sorts of crazy things that are going on where bigger schools are basically holding captive a bunch of students. Yeah. Until they know they're going to make their class, and then they're going to release them. And then those students in June and July are going to have to figure out then where they're going to go because they don't get off the wait list. So I think enrollment management is like, we don't know what fall is going to look like. Also, we have to work on retention. So persistence for some schools has been not bad, but this idea of what's going to happen in the fall is really, really important. So every year, no matter pandemic or not, we want to be looking at not enrolled because we're always worried about retention. But also the key time right now is because they're on campus.
You can still see them.
You can run into them. You might not recognize them because they might have their mask on, but at least you could go find them, and you can actually employ people to go and find them. Like, hey, RAs, look out for these people. Hey, advisors, I want you to be noticing these people. So in our Remember Student Success Funnel, how do we find students? How do we connect with them? How do we solve problems and measure those specific interventions? It is most easy to do connect and solve when you can be in the same place with someone. So we all know, like last semester where we're trying to find students because we've sent them all home, if you are in person at all, if you have any students who are coming to your campus, now is the time to invest in that not enrolled process, just so that you can easily find
and
students.
We know, the majority of your melt happens from spring into fall. And so this is the list.
The other thing I want to say is that we have to do a really good job of giving a vision about what the fall is going to look like. And actually, we have a poll. I'm really curious for you guys, how many of you have already made a decision that you are going to require the vaccine, or are not going to require the vaccine, or you haven't come to that yet. It's really interesting to see kind of a snowball of like one campus and then 4 campuses, and they're usually kind of start with bigger prestigious campus. It's what we saw about whether they're going to send students home in March and then right. whether or not they were going to come back in the spring, right? So trying to figure out where people fall on that. I think for most of our schools, it's a little bit early. That's what I'm seeing in the poll as well. It's a little bit early to have made that decision. I think we're waiting to see kind of what's going to happen across the board. But also, I would remind you, as we're thinking about giving a vision for fall, I asked Matt to make this graphic for me, and he worked very hard on it because it's so complicated, but I think it's really going to help us as we're imagining who will be coming to campus for the fall. So let me just talk through this. The students on your campus in the fall who are going to be, what is it, Matt? Juniors, right? Maybe you better talk through this. I explained it to you, and then I need you to explain this graphic.
Right, you're talking about the students who right now are juniors. Next year, they'll be seniors?
No, I'm talking about in the fall, students who are juniors will have had a sophomore, freshman, senior year.
Yeah, so if you look at for next year's juniors, what they had this last year was as a sophomore, they were distanced. Mm-hmm. As a freshman, they were sent home at spring break, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we're looking at this line, but if you think about the incoming freshmen.
Well, we actually have 4 stacks of it, right? So we have juniors who are distant sophomores, interrupted freshmen. We have sophomores who are distance freshmen, interrupted high school seniors. We have freshmen who are distance seniors, interrupted high school juniors. So you're going to have a whole class coming to your campus that have not had for 2 years a normal experience, whether it is on your campus or whether it was in high school, right?
And yeah, so only your seniors, the seniors, incoming seniors next year are the only ones who had a normal freshman experience. and so thinking about the complexity of that, and from what is the experience of these incoming freshmen, these incoming sophomores, incoming juniors. If you think about incoming freshmen, they've had 2 years of interrupted learning, and so there's going to be some academic challenge there, and also probably some hesitancy to commit because they're just not sure. And then that just stacks up as you think about not only your incoming freshmen, but your returning sophomores.
Yeah. And I think that's actually the right way to think about it. I think we obviously have to think about our freshmen. We're very good at that. But now you've expanded your at-risk population to 2 other classes who have not had the experience that you would like to deliver. So whereas historically we would have first year experience in those sorts of things, I'm going to challenge you to think about what you're going to do for those sophomores and juniors who have not had the same kind of experience on your campus. So as we're talking about, sorry, did you want to say something about that?
Right.
So as we're talking about not enrolled, under enrolled, I would just say you should be saying, as you're inviting students who have not yet enrolled on your campus for the fall, you should be talking about what is going to happen in the fall. Hey, so we think most everybody's going to be vaccinated. We're going to be able to bring people back. We're going to have faculty back in the classroom, or we don't think that's going to happen. We think we're probably still going to have Zoom. We're going to be doing hybrid. Whatever that vision is, you need to be telling students, because what's happening in their brain right now is, do I want to come back for that? Like, I know what happened in the fall. It wasn't great. If it's going to be like that, I need to make some decisions. If it's going to be different, I need to hear about that vision, right? I think you also have to talk about what was hard about fall that hopefully we don't have to deal with in this coming fall, right? So as we think about last year, what was hard, we were getting used to it. We didn't know exactly what we were doing. We might have stumbled with quarantine and isolation. We didn't have a vaccine, like all of the stuff that we're like, in retrospect, that was really difficult. Well, students experienced it too. And so just telling them, wow, that was really difficult. And here's the vision for how we think fall is going to look different, I think will be really, really powerful.
And this, Rachel, when again, thinking about a common read, maybe you want to do a common read across all of your classifications, because it's a really unique experience that they've all lived through.
Yeah. My other caveat, you guys, is that we are very tired. Everyone is so tired. And I will say, when Matt and I traveled, we were struck with the realization that so many people in so many industries have not done their jobs for a year, or have done it in a diminished capacity, right? They're smaller crowds. They're not used to people coming. They're doing restaurants. They're doing takeout. Like, so many people are out of practice for whatever their job is. And so that's really difficult because we've been thinking about all these other things that we have to. So one thing is just thinking about like the things about your job that you loved 2 years ago at this time, and how your capacity to embrace those and enjoy that student, that positive student interaction has been really decreased because we've been working so hard for a year. And also, I think, so I got both of my vaccine shots, and I was talking to a colleague the other day, and I was saying the realization when I got my shots, when I got my second one, the realization of the brain power and the mental and emotional will I've been using for a year to be careful, be vigilant, ignore the stress because there's nothing to be done about it.
Be thoughtful.
Don't pursue the capacity. Matt, you and I were talking about this, the capacity to pursue joy. No, we don't have time for that. The little things that make me happy, even within my work, I don't have time for those little things because I have to be careful and thoughtful and all of these other things. And so when I got the vaccine, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what a burden that was, how hard that was to carry. And as I'm talking to schools about, you just have to do this not enrolled thing, I honestly feel like, we've used the metaphor of running a marathon, and they're like, I've run what you asked me to, and now you're asking me to just add 2 miles. And yes, 2 miles is not much, but shoot, I am so tired thinking about one more thing. So I think it's helpful to acknowledge that. Do you have something you want to add to that, Matt?
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And I think it also just reduces a little bit our capacity for empathy because we're stressed out and we've got a lot going on. And so go ahead.
Well, empathy, that is the big word. I'm trying to remind myself because I try to be empathetic. But like you said, when we were traveling, what I forgot is it's really hard when you don't see someone's full face, their mouth, all of that. You're really not seeing the whole person, right? And so
it's like shouting at people in cars because they're not real people versus you would never talk to somebody like that if they were standing in front of you. Not funny. That I wouldn't do that, but okay. So let's move on to this not enrolled process. I want to talk first about the student's experience when we're trying to get them to register. I know you guys are doing this on your campus. In case you're not, you should be running a list of all students who are under enrolled or not enrolled. You should be connecting with them, and I'm going to give you some best practices for how to do that. And then just trying to figure out how to connect with them, solve their problems, and have a better picture of what's going to happen for our retention next year. So one thing I wanted to say is that this idea that we just need students to register, right? You have no idea how complicated what you're asking them to do is based on various different things that are happening with them. So I went back to the archive when I used to run the not enrolled process, my previous university. And I want to be the voice of students today so that we can have a clear picture of what they need, what they're going through, so we can increase our empathy for them and understand really what we're asking of them when we're saying, hey, will you just register? Okay, so under this umbrella of just register, here, I sent out my emails like, hey, I'll show you my email. I see you're not registered. Can I help you? I've actually been so busy lately. At the beginning of my semester, my roommate moved out without any notice. It doubled my bills. I ended up having to work more. I was working roughly 35 hours. Because I had to work so much more, I missed chapel a lot. So now I'm not going to have enough chapel credits. Also, I haven't had any time to go meet my advisor so I could register. I didn't know you could be exempt from chapel for an off-campus job until 3 days ago. I'm worried I'm going to be kicked out of the university for chapel credits. I also need to register, but I don't have any time between classes, homework, and work to go do it. I know I told you a lot, but I could definitely use some help. Right? So when I say to the student, hey, you just need to get registered, and she's like, okay, but do you understand? I have to work out my schedule and I'm in trouble because I didn't go to chapel. And also, clearly, I've had some traumatic event because my roommate moved out without telling me. There's all of this stuff that goes into that when she gets an email, and I'm always talking to you about be careful not to shame students. If she gets an email that shames her, she's not only shamed but stuck. Right? So she can't fix all of those things. And you're saying to her, like, hey, just go register. What's the big deal? And she's like, it's kind of a very big deal.
This is where empathy just pops off the page, right?
Yeah.
If you're not feeling the pain that this student's going through.
Yeah. Here's another one, which this is my mistake. This shows you that I was not as good at my job as I would be now. I sent the student an email and said, hey, you're not registered. Can I help you? And she said, hey, there was a miscommunication with the registrar's office. I'm waiting to see if I can get back in. I had to sit out a semester on student conduct suspension, and I had to reapply. As soon as I hear something, assuming I get in, I'll definitely need help. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about this process later about making sure that you're cross-referencing, because
this is a clear silo.
That was not a good email for her to get, right? She's waiting to see if she can get back in. And I'm like, hey, you're not registered. What's going on with you? And she's like, how am I going to the school and you don't know that I'm waiting for your registrar to tell me whether or not I can be in again, right? Okay, so we have to kind of get rid of this idea of we just need students to register, because it can be very complicated. And you guys know in your work, someone's like, hey, can you just get me? And I'm like, I can, but that's literally 7 hours of work for me, because I have to do this, and then I have to talk to this person, and then I have to clear this up, and then and those tasks that feel like we're saying, can you just, and they're like, no, I can't just. Actually, there is no can you just in this process of registration, right?
Add on the layer of global pandemic.
Right. Yeah. So this is like in 2007 when things are normal. Add on that layer for sure. So I want to talk about some common reasons for students why they're not registering and give you, again, the voice of students in this. One is that they're uncertain. They're uncertain about their class. They're uncertain about their major. They don't know who their advisor is. They don't know whether or not they're going to come back. I'm glad you emailed me. I do plan on coming back next semester, but I haven't registered because I'm considering changing majors. I wasn't sure. And in a lot of ways, I'm still not sure what I want my major to be. So I've been putting off registration. My plan was to actually register sometime this week, but if I have an assigned academic advisor, I have no idea who she is or how I could find that out. If I could get together and talk with you about next semester, I would really appreciate that, right? So we have compounded issues here. I don't know what I want my major to be.
Don't know my advisor.
I don't know who my advisor is because I've changed.
I don't even know how to do this.
I don't, right? I have no idea. I'm very uncertain. Thank you so much for emailing me. I do need help with my schedule. I just didn't know who I could ask. I think I need my registration number so I can sign up for classes because I changed my major. I don't know who I need to talk to. If you can help me and it's not too much trouble for you, I would appreciate it. Which I think in that reply, you just hear the humbleness of like, hey, thank you. Please help me figure out what I should be doing here. Go ahead.
Well, the next one, financial comes up all the time, right?
Yeah, so there's kind of a combination here of like, I can't register because I have a hold and then I have financial issues. So I can't register is I tried registering for my class on the first day, but I had a hold on my account for not having my final high school transcript, which let's just pause there for a minute and consider the implications of that for the student. It should be taken care of. I just don't know what classes I need to take. I forgot how to register. So I actually can't because I have a hold, or I have a financial hold, which a student actually said this to me. If you can lower the cost of attendance at your institution by 80%, I might consider staying. But actually, I'm going to go to these other schools. It's much cheaper. They have a better major for me. Thank you for, can you please send me a list of what I have to do to cancel? I don't plan on coming back next semester. I'm worried about my financial aid, that I won't have enough money to take the hours and be considered full-time. I have to be a full-time student to qualify for my loan. I'm not able to take out personal loans because I don't have anyone to co-sign for me. I was just going to get final week over and then try to straighten everything out. And then the last one, my parents have contacted Student Financial Services and they're working on my financial aid for second semester. They haven't heard back from my financial service office yet. I need to raise at least $5,000 for the spring. I wanted to make sure I had the money before I committed to a new semester. Please advise. I really want to continue my education at this institution. So just to pause for a minute and say those voices of the student, when you're connecting with them and when you're saying, hey, will you just come in and register? They have a lot to overcome. And I think as we are tired and as we have diminished capacity to be empathetic and to be careful, we could have this attitude, what is wrong with these students? Why are they trying to make my life miserable by just not registering? Like, we have to know if you're coming back, right? And they're like the level of things that they are dealing with. And also, again, not in a pandemic. This is what's going on with them. So really, really overwhelming. I also want to remind you that students are really busy. So this idea that they just don't have time to come in, or they're off, the office to register is closed, or their advisor is closed in the times that they would have available. So they're not registering because they're uncertain, because they can't, because they have financial aid issues, because they're busy, or they're feeling depressed, or they're feeling overwhelmed. Or like, here's a great example. I haven't registered for classes yet because I'm waiting to find out my student worker schedule. This semester I took all night classes, but I'd like to take daytime classes. I'll get registered, but I have to wait till that gets worked out. So there's all these linchpins for students that they're considering before they're able to make a registration. And the thing that you're trying to accomplish is to hear what those things are. And if there's something you can do to be helpful, then help them. And if not, just, especially if you're using 360, you set your status as follow up in 2 weeks, set a due date, and then work your punch list. Like, hey, I wanted to see if you got your financial aid stuff worked out. Hey, I wanted to see if you were able to meet with your career counselors to figure out what your major is. So that communication is really key to why students aren't registered.
Yeah, we talk about that in terms of being responsive. So it's one when you send out an email and trying to figure out what's happening and why a student hasn't registered, and they send you all of that, it's really important that not only you you have empathy, but that you respond empathetically.
Yeah.
That they feel heard in that you're going to be a resource. And I know that you have more to say about that.
Well, where that takes me is to broken systems.
Right.
And you have to be listening very, very carefully for this, because we are so siloed and sometimes we don't know what's happening in different areas. But I have two examples of this from a student. One is, hi, Rachel. Yes, I noticed I was not enrolled. I'll be studying abroad with CCCU at Oxford next semester, and we're getting admitted to the program, a process I can do myself. It's not been hard. Actually, getting enrolled for it has not been so simple. I've had quite a few meetings with the registrar when I could catch her in her office, and it's been a long process, but I finally met with her, and I thought we had gotten it figured out since she told me she would register me the next day. Apparently, she hasn't. If you have any extensive contact with the registrar's office, I'm sure you understand my frustration. I've been by her office a few times this week and emailed her, and she finally emailed me back, but she hasn't been able to register me because she has to talk to my advisor. I'm planning on staying at this institution. I'll go by her office again tomorrow and see if I can get her to get some things done. I'll let you know what new develops, right? Well, sorry, that's a broken system, right? Where, and there, it's a combination of things. It's like study abroad and advisor and registrar and student and my office who's in charge of not enrolled. And so how we uncover those broken systems, I will tell you that I have heard of advisors where a point person is saying, hey, you just have to call that advisor 12 times and then they'll pick up, right? That's a broken system. And you think about students who are dealing with all of the things that we talked about at the front, and then we don't have easy systems for them to be able to connect and move through really seamlessly. We're just making it really much more difficult for our students and for our staff.
And that sounds like a student who is a pretty strong self-advocate.
Yeah,
right? For
sure. I call this one, this is my last one, reason students don't register. I call this one the Matt reason. So Matt was like, one important thing about this is social pressure, right? He was saying like, I'm having a great time. And then one of my friends would be like, hey, what are you taking next semester? And he'd be like, wait, what? Are we supposed to do that? Yeah, we've gotten 15 emails. Okay, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. And then goes. So this idea of like, hey, I'm planning to return. It just slipped my mind. I didn't realize I was supposed to enroll. Thank you so much for the reminder. Or yeah, I've just been busy. I'll go see my counselor tomorrow. Sometimes students do just need this prompting, and we have to figure out the right language so that some people won't ignore the emails that you're sending them, but like have a title that's like, you're gonna fail. I mean, not really that, but something to be like, you have to pay attention to what I'm saying right here. And it's not a long message. It's like 2 sentences, right? I don't know, what could they have done? So they would have been like, oh.
What I think about is so, you know, the social pressure part was real for me. But when you think about a campus and a student's experience right now where they're not connected as much as they had been in the past.
They're not hanging out with their friends.
And so I just think there's something that can be done as for advisors to encourage when a student does come. Hey,
tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Here's a reminder card to hand to your friend. That might have worked for me. I was always just waiting, to find out what the right class was. I didn't know.
Yeah. So I hope you hear the voice of the student in that. We are in this process and we have reasons why we're doing what we're doing, but also students are people with whole lives and they have stress and they have uncertainties and things that we can't solve really easily for them. We're just trying to gather that information so that we can find places where we might be able to remove barrier processes or offer some solutions. The other thing I'll say to you is make sure that you're paying attention to your blueprint mapping and your language. So for example, and this is kind of a like, hey, side note, probably you have a very lockstep withdrawal process. So if students are not planning to return, you have things that they have to do, like, hey, you have to go meet with financial aid and you have to make sure if you did register for maybe 8 hours next semester, we've got to get those canceled. So you probably have this process that you're walking through. But please make sure that it is streamlined and simple. So this is an example of withdrawal email that we were sending to students, which remember, if they're feeling overwhelmed, and they're feeling like they have too many things on their plate, when you're telling them you have to do these 15 things, that can feel super overwhelming. I think the next example is the, goodness.
So just to say, I mean, a communication audit during this process
Absolutely.
is really important.
Both process blueprinting and a communication audit. This next one is what financial aid was sending, which I've tried super hard to read through it, and I only get to the second line because I don't understand what we're saying, and it's very overwhelming.
It's a Venn diagram.
Right.
If Stafford loan, if Perkins
do
loan,
this,
if
you
this
do
and
this, right.
Or
so you just have to be very careful and try to make that as simple as you can for all students in the process. Maybe just give them, hey, we've adapted this new language. And so I'm just going to tell you, here's what I need you to do. And then here's what's going to happen. And don't forget this stuff. So I would just say there's a lot to be said about processes and communication. You want to definitely be thinking about how students are experiencing that as you're connecting with them.
So let's pause. We have a poll. Do you have a formal withdrawal process?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that piece of, and also, those of you might chat to me. I'm really curious too if you have a exit survey as well, because that's another piece where I'm really curious about how we're collecting information about why students are leaving, and what's the, like, what are we doing with that data, Also, Rachel, I'm not sure if I missed a poll or if it's still coming about faculty versus professional advisors.
So just going back to the advising process,
Yeah.
If you're mapping out registration, the process, we're curious if is your campus driven by professional advisors? Do you have faculty advisors, some combination, or unsure?
Yeah, because that will make a really big difference too in your process. Okay, so it looks like most of you have a combination. All right, so I want to talk about best practice. Let's see, Lindsay does have an exit survey. I'm so happy. I think I love, so I just took 6 strips. How about back up? Okay, first of all, a survey process that happens in the absence of another person is nice because you collect data, but it is not a good experience for the student. And so if that student is going to be a stop out, but they're going to come back, or if they're leaving because they have a family concern or a health concern or something like that, the empathy and the kindness and the invitation to stay part of our community that you show in that survey, where you're asking them questions and you're listening to them, is a great way to recover with that student. And our favorite exit survey question is, would you recommend this university to your friends? Because what that says is, something was going on with me and it didn't go great, but absolutely, I feel like I was a part of a community here, versus, oh no, and I'm going to go back to my circle of friends and I'm going to tell all of them, don't go to that institution because they don't take good care of you. So I love that person to person. Let's talk about what happened. And Matt, you and I were saying today, like, if it's not a good fit for them, please go with our blessing.
Right.
Like, it's okay if if this isn't the best thing for you. You don't have to feel like we have some animosity between each other. I honestly want what's best for you. So.
I think you learn a lot from the critique, so the student feedback, where they might say this, I would recommend it to someone else, but it's not for me. For you to understand that maybe there are some things that we just need to improve, or maybe there's nothing to be done. It just wasn't going to work.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to give you my best practice suggestions. And if you have a practice that you do and you're not enrolled process, please chat it with us. We're happy to learn from you.
So the first one, Rachel, when you talk about cross-reference, this is gathering information, not being in a silo, not letting other people work in a silo, but being able to have that collaboration across campus, right?
So is the student suspended? How is the student conduct record? Do they have any holds? So, hey, you're not registered. I know I can't register because I can't afford next semester. Okay, I'm really sorry. That should have been a different email. In fact, I'll tell you guys, I don't have it on this list, but related to cross-referencing, you should be sending an email to your students that have any kind of hold, whether it's financial or high school transcript or whatever, that says, hey, I see you have a hold. Is there something I can do to help you with that? So here's my suggestion. Hi, hope you're having a great week. The end of the semester is almost here, if you can believe it. I just wanted to email to make sure that you know you have a hold on your account from financial aid. I know sometimes that not much can be done about that, but I wanted to make sure you knew about it so that if you could take care of it, you would. If you need to talk to someone about your hold, here's the number for your financial aid counselor. After you get the hold taken off, if you need any help picking classes for next semester or registering for classes, please don't hesitate to contact me. If for some reason you're not planning to return, please let me know. So that should happen before you run your not registered list so that you have a really clear picture of where all of those students are. And then when you're in your not registered process, then you might send them an email that's like, hey, I see you still have that hold. How's it going? Is there something else you need? But you were reminding me about, we talked to a student who was a ward of the state.
Yeah, so at one of our universities, we were just trying to understand they were describing a pinball, feeling like a pinball as they were trying to clear a hold, be able to take care of their balance.
So it's like the state needed their registration in order to give the money to clear the hold, but the university was like, you have to clear the hold before. And there was no easy solution. It just was a lot of work for the student to try to get those things worked out. So understanding, cross-referencing, have a really clear picture of what's happening with the student so that you don't make a mistake there. The next recommendation that I would make is that you have a third-party person check in with them. So we've said for a long time, there can be friction between a student and their advisor. If I don't love my major, if I'm not doing well in my major classes, if I just am not, I don't trust my advisor, I don't have a great relationship with them just because I haven't spent a lot of time with them. Our recommendation is that you have kind of a neutral third party that just says, hey, I'm a counselor, an academic counselor. I was looking at your schedule. I noticed you didn't enroll. I wanted to email you to see if there's anything I could do to help you register. If you need help, please come and see me. I'm in my office between 8 and 5. You can do that. If you have any other questions, please let me know. And I think the reason students were telling me so much is because I'm giving them unconditional positive regard, but also I don't care if you want to change your major. Like, I'm not going to take that personally, right? So that having a third party person who's checking in and saying, hey, just, is there something I can do to be helpful to you? I think will be really useful.
Even if the advisors won't take it personally, students are concerned about that.
Feel like they would. Yep. Okay. The next thing is to try to solve this not registered process in some really creative ways. So we know about schools that have advising events, which is like a career fair, except all the advisors are in one room together and they say, hey, between 8 and 5, come and we're going to have advisors and you don't have to figure out where they're supposed to be or who your advisor is. We'll show you to the right place and you can get registered. So I love that idea of having events. I also love the idea of traveling advisors, which is where, like, after lunch, they're out in the middle of the cafeteria, or they're visiting res halls, or you have a big event on your campus that everyone goes to, like daily meetings or like chapel, that you would have advisors outside able to respond to students in that place instead of having students have to come and figure out who their advisor is.
And we have some schools that have been very creative because at many of our schools, they've had to go to virtual advising. You're not able to have in-person events. Mm-hmm. So you have to have large, virtual events and Zoom breakout rooms and start that process. But we also have schools that have been very creative in literally a mobile advisor with a screen on a cart that rolls around and students can stop and it's hey, we're going to have a face-to-face meeting. It's not going to be you're going to feel like we're
making a solution here.
We're in my office.
Yeah. The other thing to leverage as you're trying to collect information about students who aren't enrolled is those touch point relationships. And that can look really different on every campus. So maybe it is an advisor. I was telling Matt, we had an advisor at our theater, in our theater program at our university, who I knew I could just send Donna a list of, here are your 5 students who aren't enrolled. And she'd be like, this is what's going on with this one. This is what's going on with this one. We're working on this one. She just knew, because she knew her advisees super well. If you don't have that kind of advisor, and it can be really uneven, you think about RAs or RDs who are just having a casual conversation like, hey, what are you taking next semester? Well, I haven't registered. Oh, well, do you need help with that? Do you know who your advisor is? Are you planning to come back? Because remember, once you have the information, you can address it. The problem is this black box where we just have no idea if it's like a student just hasn't thought of it yet,
right,
or it's super complicated, but they want to come back, or they're like, oh no, I am already registered for next semester at a different place. So having that information through those touch point relationships and having a conversation on your campus that just says, hey guys, we're at the time of the year where every student that you're coming into contact with, you should be asking them, what are you taking next semester? And then if they're like this, be excited about it. And if they're like, oh, I don't know yet, then collect some of that information so we can figure out what to do there. Anything to add about touch point relationships, Matt?
No.
Okay. Also, I know, Matt, you were talking about this idea of grant money, specifically given that schools have been given money to give to students.
Yeah, so with the funding from the Department of Education, half of the money that's given to a university or college is should be directed to a student to help them. And we're working with schools just to be thoughtful about that process and how they help students can be used to overcome holds and or pay off small balances so that students don't have that hold and continue. Just being thoughtful about that, not just, it isn't just your Pell recipients or based on EFC. There's actually this kind of middle ground where they're not Pell, their EFC is too high. And so if you can pay attention to that, you can, for your not enrolled students who are on that bubble, bring them in. You can have great gains with that as well.
For sure. I also think it would be really helpful in your email that you're sending to students to say, hey, if there's a particular reason why you're not registered or why you're planning to not come back, please tell me, because I have some resources that I can use to help you. And you just imagine for those financial aid issues, or even for a high school transcript, like, can we not lift that for a minute so that they can get registered? Because what happens is the longer you're not registered, the either more anxious you are about it or the less connected you are to your university. So Matt and I had this conversation about enroll them anyway, which I don't think is a great idea. But here's the idea, that you would say, hey, you're not sure if you want to come back because you don't know what fall is going to look like and you don't know what's going to happen with your family and those sorts of things. But I want to make sure that you have these linchpin courses that are required as prerequisites for your major, or I know that you have one more class that you have to take in this area. I want to make sure that you get it. Can we do everything we need to get you enrolled so that, don't say this part, but so that psychologically you have a vision for yourself in the fall coming back versus we don't enroll in April, we don't enroll in May, June, July. By the time we get to July, I'm anxious that I could even get the classes I wanted if I wanted to come
Absolutely.
back. And so I've already made this like, oh, I missed the deadline. It's too late. They're not going to have what I want. We love the process of actually enrolling students for 2 semesters. So I think it has to do with knowing if a class is going to make and like faculty schedule and that sort of thing. But our dear friends at George Fox, they do this and I love it. In the fall, they're like, here's what you're going to take in the fall. Here's what you're going to take in the spring. And what it does psychologically for a student is gives them a vision, not for a semester, but for an entire year that you are going to be with us and you're going to be connected. And then we're going to do that for your sophomore year. You're going to register right now for your first semester of your sophomore and your second semester of your sophomore. I just love speaking that this is a 4-year commitment that you're making, and we don't want you to psychologically say, I'm going to distance myself from this university.
I really don't understand why schools are going semester to semester when the vision is to graduate, and that's what we expect.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you can work into that, but even just asking a student, is there any reason why we shouldn't register you for classes right now? Would be helpful. And their feedback on that will give you an insight into what the hesitation really is. And then you have somewhere to start. Absolutely.
So I think in general, remember our funnel where we're just talking about make sure that you're seeing students. On Reinhardt's campus, we were saying, it's all about context, because if we have a student who in their third week stoplight survey, faculty are like, they have a red light because they don't have a book yet. Well, if we know this person doesn't have a book because she just lost her job and she can't afford it, and this person doesn't have a book, and admissions identified the student as low academic goals and motivation, and then this student is an athlete, and we don't know why they don't have their book, but we're just going to call the coach and it will get straightened out, right? And in those three places, if I'm just working off a spreadsheet, I would say, okay, they're all red. I'm just going to send them an email that says, hey, if you need something, let me know. But if I have the context and I have a chance to connect and understand what's actually going on, why are these students not registering? Then all of a sudden I can give this student a grant, I can call this coach, and I can say to this student, hey, I need you to come in. We're gonna do weekly meetings of success coaching so that we can make sure you get to be, where you need to. So that process of connecting, making sure you see your students and solving the problems, I think will have such an impact on retention in the fall.
And the time is now. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is the time to make that impact. We know that you're tired. We also know that you don't have to do this alone. You have great campus partners, maybe not as many as you would hope right now, but just seeking out some people on your campus who have that same heart for students and talking to them, share this with them about, hey, here are ways that we can connect and be able to improve not only registrations, but what that will do for next year, hitting record retention. This is where that starts.
For sure. Okay, I have some resources for you. So first of all, let me just say, if you are in the middle of not enrolled process and you use 360 and you are using Excel and email, so help me, you need to contact me, because we have a whole process in 360 that will make that way easier. It's going to help you get the information to the right people. It's going to give you measurements of your work. It will make your life much, much easier. So please, if that would be of help to you, I'd love to push that out to you. It's kind of a out of the box solution. So I can just be like, here's your types and your statuses and your forms and your workflow, and here you go. So that's the first resource. The next resource is Sherry Woosley and I are doing a webinar on Thursday. It is specifically about not making retention complicated, because we are all tired, and the fewer brain calories we can use, the better. And so I'd love for you to join us for that. We're going to really go through kind of retention light practices that have a really significant impact on student retention and student success. So please join me for that.
Hey, Rachel, we have a conference coming up.
We do have a conference coming up very soon, actually. And this conference is about connecting the silos of academic affairs and student development. We're going to have awesome speakers. I'm really excited about just spending time thinking about both what's happened, but also how do we train up our success coaches really well? How do we bridge that gap between those two areas? How do we get faculty buy-in? How do we use technology and data to our advantage? There are going to be some really interesting topics and some great time to just take a minute and think. And to be really clear, it is a conference, but it is more built to be professional development, because we want it to be actionable, interesting, compelling information that's going to help grow you as a professional and really inspire you about different things that you can be doing on your campus and in your particular area. So please join us for that. That would be really fun.
Just designed to recharge and help you as you face this next year, connect between whether you're on the academic side or the student development side, to be able to come together with your partners.
And I promise that I have built in some reflection time. So whether that means you sit in your chair with your eyes closed and reflect, or you take a walk or whatever, we definitely have built in some time for you to just think about and reflect on what's where you are and what's going on.
So we have a bit.ly there. It is, if you go to bit.ly/, and this is case sensitive, capital B, capital T, capital G, lowercase conference, and register for the Bridging the Gap conference.
And then the last thing is our summit initiative. We're really excited about this. If you're interested in closing the equity gap, Matt and I have just cherry picked all of the best practices about how to find students who are not succeeding at a rate of your kind of average student. And then here are all of the things we can do to close that equity gap so that we can walk alongside them to success on the summit. We're really excited about that piece. Hey, we are in April, right? It's April?
It is April.
Okay, we're in April. I just want to remind you that in the normal rhythm of the academic year, our students are super excited about good weather. So everybody has spring fever, even if you're in the Northeast and spring is like just barely there, everybody's excited about that. They're thinking about their housing for next year. So that's a place that they are. And then also the end of the semester pressure is beginning. So they're starting to think about what grade am I going to get? Oh no, maybe I haven't done as well as I need to. And that's kind of where our students' brains are. And I know that is where your brains are too. So we're so grateful that you would come and spend time with us in the middle of this very busy part of the semester as you're thinking about registration and academic pressure and everything that's going on with your students. It's always a delight, and we are happy to be connected to you any way we can be. If there's any way that we can serve you, please let us know. Otherwise, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.